Life Management Science Labs would like to acknowledge that we live and produce this podcast on the traditional lands of the Wurundjeri people. We'd also like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands of our listeners and our international colleagues. We'd like to pay our respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging. Hello everyone, and welcome to Work in Progress, the Personal Productivity Science Insights podcast produced by LMSL, the Life Management Science Labs. We are champions of life management science, providing structured insights informed by science and inspired by practice on key aspects of conscious living. Each week, we bring you scientific and practical insights on each element with the expert knowledge of professionals in the field. I am your host, Joanna. Let's get started.
Hi everyone, and welcome back to the show. Today we'll be exploring the topic of job hunting and resume writing, which can often seem like a daunting task. Choosing what information to pack in and navigating the ever-changing job market is no easy feat. Today our guest, Gabrielle Suttis, is here to share some advice with us and hopefully make the process a little bit easier. Gabrielle is an entrepreneur with a background in human resources and is the founder of Go Getter Resumes. She has an extensive history of connecting candidates with jobs in construction, oil and gas, and safety industries. She is also an award-winning resume writer and a certified resume strategist who takes an individualized approach to each resume. Gabrielle started out as an administrative assistant for the Government of Alberta and has since progressed to specialize in human resources and seeks to bridge the gap between job seeker and employer. So with this wealth of knowledge, we are excited to have Gabrielle guiding us in our topic today. So hi, Gabrielle. Welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you so much.
Of course. So to get us a bit started, can you tell us about your background and what compelled you to pursue becoming a career practitioner?
Yes, I, like many people, have had a number of different career switches. It's funny you actually say I started as an admin assistant. Prior to that, I was a speech assistant in a preschool working with special needs kids. Um, that was right out of high school. And then I found I was sick a lot because they're kids with a lot of germs. So I did some deep digging, personal reflection, and realized that my favorite part of the job was helping my other coworkers do their jobs and connect with the children and do the speech things and all that stuff. Um, so that led me down the HR road, where I did some admin work during that transition for the government. And then I got into the safety industry and into oil and gas, where I started specializing as a recruiter. Um, and as you can imagine, many resumes a day. It was pretty crazy sometimes. But I was realizing over and over that my job would be so much easier if only people could write resumes. There were some really, really bad ones and some decent ones and some good ones. And I got to choose who to call ultimately, which is a lot of pressure because I, I identify with the job seekers and know that everybody is very capable and um, good people, but you really have to meet the hiring manager's needs and meet the needs of the role in the company. So that was a learning curve. But one of the biggest things that I kept running into was that the candidates think they're qualified and the hiring managers think there are no qualified candidates. So there's a huge gap there, and they're not communicating effectively together. So that's kind of where the idea of being a resume writer came from, was that if only people could write resumes, they could really showcase what they're able to do and connect with the hiring managers on a meaningful level, as opposed to just shooting out resumes left, right, and center.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's a fantastic background to draw from for your career now and for our topic today, of course. Could you tell us what is probably the most common misconception about resume writing?
I think there's two big ones. First one is that it's easy. It is not easy. um, it is a skill, and a skill that not everybody has. And that ties into the second one, or the second misconception, and that's that it's about you as the job seeker, um, which is actually about your employer and what you can do for them. Um, so it's a mixture of having to or being able to talk about yourself in a way that matters to somebody else. It's um, not censoring, but highlighting what is meaningful to them and what you bring to the table.
That's really interesting. So, before we dive into our topic further today, we'd like to get to know you a little bit more. So, first of all, what do you like to do in your spare time?
I like to read and sing and lots of outdoor activities like hike, bike, and kayak. I just moved from Edmonton, Alberta, Canada to Phoenix, Arizona. So there's a whole lot new areas to explore on foot and on bike, and there is water. I have kayaked here in Phoenix in the desert. So yeah, it's been exploring has been a lot of fun.
That's really cool. And do you have a favorite book or movie?
A favorite book I just read this year is called Briefly Perfectly Human by Alua Arthur. Um, she's a death doula. So fascinating content. What she writes is about essentially making an authentic life by being real about the end, by getting real about the end of our lives. So it completely reframed my perspective on death, and I read it right as my Oma had passed away. So it was very meaningful and very special, and I also just want to take the time to recommend it to everybody. I found it so powerful.
Yeah, that's really amazing. And are you listening to any podcasts at the moment?
Some of my favorites, I kind of go sporadically through podcasts. When I have to be in the car for a long time is when I tend to to start listening again.
Yeah.
Um, I really like Grammar Girl, which is pretty relevant for for my work. I get lots of grammar and writing tips and things. Um, Song Exploder is a really fun one that tears down songs and talks about how they all come together and what went into making the song. And then Mel Robbins is a popular one, and The Mindset Mentor I really like also.
Yeah, great recommendations. My next question for you is, do you have a role model? Now, this could be either in your personal life or your professional life.
I do. Both, actually. The first one that comes to my mind is my sister. She's just the most loving and compassionate person I know, who always is able to say the right thing in any situation, and I really look up to her for that. And professionally, a colleague named Cami. She's in Edmonton, and she's one of the first people I met when I started writing resumes. And we went quite a while without talking. Like we met and exchanged some books and things, and then just recently we've been meeting almost monthly. And she's just so talented and so insightful and so helpful. I'm so happy to have her in my corner.
Yeah, that's amazing. And my last question for you here is there a course or a class that you've taken, or maybe even something that you've taught to somebody that has inspired you?
I couldn't think of one for this one.
That's okay. Not everybody has
Not a
one for
course.
every question. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oftentimes people do say that there's not one particular thing that has inspired them, but maybe their whole degree or a person that they learnt from.
Mhm.
So that's quite interesting sometimes.
I guess I have done, I've done some like professional development webinars through National Resume Writers Association. Um, there's been some really valuable ones recently about personal branding and the two pillars and stuff that's really relevant to resume writing. So keeping me um, current and modern on what the best practices are.
Yeah, yeah. That's amazing. So, branching off of that, we're going to start diving into our topic for today, just with some basics to begin with. So, how would you define personal productivity?
I think personal productivity is very abstract and complex. Um, for me, I feel most productive when my actions and my goals align with my values. Um, so when I'm living my values, that's when I feel the most happy, fulfilled, productive, like I'm moving forward. I've spent some time identifying my values as adventure, authenticity, balance, personal development, and health. So when all those things are happening, I'm on top of the world.
Yeah, that's a fantastic answer. And then next up, how would you define job hunting?
easy definition for job hunting is the pursuit of employment. When you are researching opportunities, you're applying for jobs online, you're doing interviews, all those actions combine to make an active job hunt. I think you can also take that even further to include things like networking, volunteering, skill building, essentially anybody who has a job or wants a job is a candidate. So anything you do to manage your professional persona as an employee, colleague, or a leader is considered a job hunt, I think. Could be.
Yeah, interesting. And so, how would you describe the relationship between personal productivity and job hunting?
Um, they're deeply connected because they both require the value and goal alignment. So when you approach job hunting strategically, it's less about just chasing jobs around and more about attracting the right opportunities to you and really thinking about what would be a good fit for you and what you want out of your life. So if you can tie that part of your personal productivity into job hunting, then that's um, how you will get that fulfillment and alignment.
Yeah, amazing. That totally makes sense. I think it's really important to identify those values. Otherwise, it's really hard to know what you're looking for. So,
Mhm.
yeah, I
Um, can
go
I
ahead.
elaborate? Sorry, on the
Of
values too.
course, yeah.
I think values are also really fluid, so you can easily have um, professional values that don't align or that aren't the same as your personal values, and your values might be different in a situation where you're like at family Thanksgiving dinner versus um, planning a big camping trip. You're going to have different priorities and different values. So here, focusing in on the professional values are probably what's going to guide you towards that level of productivity.
Yeah, definitely. So, diving a little bit deeper now, what would you say are the core aspects to a good resume? And I suppose on that, what do recruiters tend to look out for?
Mhm. Um, this is any a hard and easy answer.
Yeah.
What they want is the alignment between the resume and the job requirements. Um, that's kind of it. If it's a really ugly resume, if it's formatted terribly, if there's big capitals and small lower, like big fonts, small fonts, all of the above, as long as the content is there, that's what matters. Um, so if the words convey that you can do what the job needs you to do, that's your first step in getting a phone call.
Interesting. That's really cool. And what would you say are the biggest mistakes that job seekers make when they're crafting their resumes?
The most often one that I see is kind of like I said at the beginning, it talks all about them and not enough about the hiring manager or what the job requires. So that usually looks like listing responsibilities without any results or impact, um, which is boring. It's just flat out boring to read. They already know what the job entails in most cases by the job title. So you don't really need to tell them things that they already know. You need to tell them what you did that's unique to you being in that role that would not have happened if it weren't you. Um, and then also, I think it happens a lot is assuming that the reader knows what you're talking about when you don't really know, especially if you're applying online, you don't really know who your reader is necessarily. It could be a receptionist, an admin assistant, it could be the CEO of a small company, it could be a technical expert, but you kind of want to assume that your reader does not know everything that you're talking about. So avoid using too many acronyms without writing them out first, and providing context on each employer and role can go a long way too.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. And what would you say is the importance of tailoring a resume for each specific job application? And what is the best way to do this in an efficient manner? Because I know in my experience, it certainly takes quite a lot of time.
It can, but it is everything.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it's hard to hear. um, but generally, if you have like ultimately, that's how you tell your reader that you can do the job. That's how you achieve that alignment between resume and job posting. You have to speak their language and prove to them that you can do it, essentially. So generally, you'll have some like buckets of jobs. So you'll have maybe a human resources administrator resume, maybe a general administrative resume, um, or a leadership resume on top of that. And those are three different skills that you'll want to highlight in each resume. So that's where tailoring it comes in, is you can pull keywords from each job posting and work them into your resume. There's probably synonyms. That would be a really good place to start, is look for all the things that are the same meaning, but just different words, and then use the words from the job posting in your resume as much as possible.
Yeah, that's great advice. And what would you say are some unconventional but effective ways to stand out in a saturated job market?
Number one is to provide proof. Most people don't. So if you can provide those results and not just list responsibilities, you're already a step ahead of everybody else. I have a whole list here for this one.
Yeah, go ahead.
Remember that there is a human on the other side. So you want to optimize for AI, ATS, and human readers. Very important. A compelling professional summary will get you more interest right away because it's right at the top of your document. They'll see that first thing, and that's what gets them interested in reading further on throughout the document. A lot of people fall into the trap of thinking about the past and what they have done. And what you really want to do is bring out the transferable skills and write in future ready language. So give the impression that you will be doing this for your new employer, which is tricky. It's a tricky switch.
Yeah.
And then customize, tailor everything as specific to the job posting as possible. Within reason, don't go totally crazy, but putting effort in there will help you get farther.
Yeah.
And I have a few more.
Yeah, please keep going.
Demonstrate the ability to adapt and learn and the desire to adapt and learn. That's a really big thing right now, obviously, with AI and all the different technology things. If you don't learn it, you're going to be left behind. So the employers are looking for people who can really roll with the punches and pick up new things and keep everybody going forward. Include a cover letter, even when they don't ask for it, and send a thank you note after an interview, as an email is usually sufficient in my experience. And then network, build professional relationships, and get to know people.
Yeah.
So it's not just documentation.
Yeah, this is all fantastic advice. What a list. That's amazing. Thank you for sharing that with us.
Thank you.
So in our little introduction, you mentioned personal branding very briefly. Can you tell us about the role that personal branding might play when you're searching for a job, and what can job seekers do to develop a strong personal brand?
So personal branding is basically the portrayal of who you are as an employee or a colleague. And obviously, the way that the job search process or the hiring selection process is set up, that's hard to do because you're applying through computers. It feels incredibly inhuman. But the one thing that you can really do is focus in on one or two things that you want potential employers to know about you and really infuse that throughout your document. So put it in your professional summary, put it in your, like, what skills build towards that brand, and then what accomplishments you've done that have built that, or education, anything that backs it up. It's kind of like a sweater, a Nike sweater, for example. Everybody, knows that a Nike sweater is going to be good for running. So you as a brand, what are you going to be good for?
That's really cool. And then my next question for you is, what should candidates do to effectively showcase their soft skills on their resumes?
Soft skills are tricky. Um, The best thing you can do, a lot of people go try to list them in that section right at the top of your core competencies. That's not the most effective or the best place to include them. It's better to provide proof, like I've been mentioning. So demonstrate how you have developed which skills. So provide information about the teams that you've worked on, who your stakeholders or customers were, how you've interacted with people, collaborated, um, worked on projects together, all that kind of stuff, and do that throughout your bullet points, is the best place to put it, because then it's demonstrating what you accomplished through these soft skills.
Yeah, that's great advice. Going back to that proof time and time again, it's really becoming a
Yep.
sticking point, isn't it?
Yes, prove it.
Yeah, absolutely. So there is a slew of information that can be put into a resume, but doesn't have to be, such as certifications, publications, hobbies, that kind of thing. How would you recommend job seekers assessing what the most relevant information is and avoiding overcrowding in their resume?
um, First and foremost, make it relevant. Your reader has to care. So that means you can actually use ChatGPT or something to put the job description in and say, what are the top few things? Um, and then revise that with your actual experience. So I caution you not to just copy and paste because it will put in who knows what. So that's kind of the starting point to get some ideas on what your reader is going to care most about in each posting. Um, Basically, if there's a requirement in the job posting, then put it on your resume. If it says you need Word, Excel, Outlook experience, put Word, Excel, Outlook on your resume, or specific software programs, etc. If there's something there that you have, then put it there.
Yeah,
um,
absolutely.
if there's anything, a certificate or something that you kind of did on the side, if it's anything that adds to your credibility and candidacy and makes it look obvious that you were a good fit, then put it in your resume, put it on there. Or if there's something that other applicants don't have or are unlikely to have that adds to your credibility for the position, then put that on there too.
Yeah. That's amazing advice. And so I mentioned before that, job hunting and refining your resume can sometimes take up a good amount of time. Do you have any advice for managing that, while people might be working full time and managing their personal lives?
That's tricky. There, maybe you've heard the saying that job searching is a full-time job. Um, I don't really stand by that because then nobody would ever get new jobs ever.
Yeah.
So, um, but I like to schedule the activities like into your calendar, like you would schedule a dinner out or a workout or a meeting with a friend. Actually, block it off and prioritize doing it. Make it reasonable, like a realistic amount of time. You know your life and your schedule and how badly you need your new job. So if you really, really are desperate for a new one, then you can put a little extra time in. But if it's kind of a side project, it would be nice if then, maybe spend an hour a week or whatever. You can make it less. Just be careful not to overdo it and burn out, because once you're in that headspace in the job search, it's really, really hard to get going again. And one other thing to consider that is that if it's not an internal position, so at the company that you already work for, don't use your work email address to apply for jobs. That
Yeah.
was a lot of negatives, but yeah, like make sure if you're applying outside your current company, use your personal information. Don't use the work company computer to be applying for other jobs. That would look bad.
Yes, great advice. Sometimes it's something that we might forget to do, especially if we're, so focused on the workplace and always using that email. Maybe the other one's not even, in our mind if it's not really relevant. Yeah,
Or
great
thinking
advice.
to like, if you just have a real bad afternoon, you're like, oh, this place sucks. I'm just going to send off the
Yeah.
application. Don't do that.
Yeah, very
Settle down
true.
first.
Take a breath. We can think about this. Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly.
So, another thing that we wanted to address was employment gaps. They're not uncommon. It might be for a mental health break, changing career, even COVID layoffs might be a reason. Should you address an employment gap on your resume? And if so, what's the most effective way to do it?
So my answer is it depends, as with a lot of these resume questions, because everybody's situation is so unique. And that's partly where the resume strategist comes in, is that I can help decide what to prioritize and how to frame your story. But always with resumes, being honest and upfront is the best policy. You will never go wrong by being truthful. And I do think, actually, I think that's one of the silver linings, I guess, to COVID is that um, employment gaps are a lot more common and hiring managers are a lot more understanding of them now and open to people having that on their resume. Because I have definitely worked with people who that was a big red flag was any time off from a job. But we all know that life throws us unexpected punches and things change very quickly now. So um, usually for addressing an employment gap, I like to use years instead of months and years. That's also beneficial because it just looks less cluttered when there's less text. Um, if it's relevant, you can also say, you can provide a little bit of context, like you finished the contract. So that's not the same as, quitting and then being done for however long. So that can kind of provide some context to your reader so that they're understanding of your situation instead of jumping to conclusions.
Yeah, great advice. And the next thing that also is rising in popularity is video resumes and portfolio websites. What are your thoughts on the effectiveness of these?
I do not like the idea of video resumes, not one little bit. Um, I can see how recruitment teams are attracted to them because it makes it seem like there's less work for them to do. Um, but I don't think it's an equitable way to screen candidates. There's not a lot of perfect ways to screen candidates, but I think that one particularly can throw a lot of really qualified people out of the running um, because it's a different skill. Not everybody is a presenter, um, and it's a one-way conversation, which is extremely unnatural. And there's challenges that they can struggle with, and like if any one little thing like that means that they're out of the running, then that's not fair at all, at all.
Mm,
Um, the pros, though, that opposed to when you're looking at a piece of paper, somebody's resume, in a video interview, you can actually, practice your message. You can put some personality into it. Um, they can see you as a human, essentially, a little more than on the paper. So I'm not sure if that balances out or not. But if the thought of myself having to do an interview sounds horrible, like a video interview, I do not want to do that.
yeah, it's
Yeah,
interesting, isn't it? They sort of, a written resume and a video resume, they both have their pros and cons. Not everyone's good at writing either. Presenting yourself on
exactly.
camera is also very difficult, or can be, depending on, especially as you were saying, the unnatural one-way conversation. And it just, yeah, it seems like it would be a bit stilted. I'm not sure, but that's interesting to get your opinion on that as well. So again, another new thing that's joined the field of recruitment, AI. How do you think that the rise of AI has changed the way resumes should be structured?
Good question. So structured, I think there's not really that much change. All of the components are still the same. You still need your name and contact information, employment history, education, etc. Those are all still really important parts of a resume. What an applicant tracking system does, it's actually like a filing cabinet for resumes. So when you submit a really beautiful looking document, what it does is take just the text. So all of the colors, lines, indenting, etc., are all gone. It looks nothing like the paper that you put in, or paper that you put in. Um, so with that, I think some of the main changes are really things like using more standard wording. So employment history instead of career narrative. Um, Core competencies is still pretty common, but it will look for things that it recognizes. So it'll recognize a phone number, it will recognize an email address, it'll recognize employment history as the heading, education as the heading. Um, so making that as clear cut as possible, I think. The main problem with AI and getting it to write your resume, if you say, hi, write me a resume for a podcast interviewer, is I actually wonder what it would do for that one, but it will create a really vague and boring document that is basically just a job description. So on first glance, you might be like, hey, this is pretty good. That's actually kind of what I did. But that's just the job. There's no proof that you were good at it. There's no personality. There's nothing to intrigue your reader. So it's surprisingly easy to recognize an AI written resume, and recruiters are definitely onto it and will throw it out quite quickly, unfortunately. So using it to help, but not as the base, is really the key there.
Yeah. I kind of have a funny anecdote. I was once in an interview and the person interviewing me thanked me for not using AI and was like, I could tell that you wrote this yourself and it was really lovely. And I was like, you're welcome.
Amazing. Ooh, that's interesting. That'll be a whole new skill, is not using AI.
Yeah, it was pretty funny. So when it comes to interviews, actually, can you tell us a bit about what questions candidates should expect and perhaps what they can do to best prepare, maybe for unexpected questions as well?
Mm-hmm. That's another kind of, it depends one. It's so hard to prepare what questions they're going to ask because every company is so different and has such different needs and different communication styles, different everything. A lot of people use behavioral questions, like tell me about a time when, or what would you do if, which those, I know I've been on the spot with a question like that and just completely drawn a blank, just I have no idea where my brain went, but it was not in the room. So to prepare for those questions and unexpected questions, if there's anything that comes out of nowhere, try to have 3 main stories, 1 to 3 main stories. Well, 1 wouldn't be 2 to 3 main stories that highlight the skills required for the role, the top skills, and use those throughout the interview. So you don't need a fresh example for absolutely everything, but be able to tweak each story so that it demonstrates the skill that they're looking for in their interview question. So it's a bit of a mindset reframe, maybe, to try to kind of guide the interview in the direction that you get to tell them what you want to tell them, instead of just being interrogated by them, which can be an awful feeling. So if you go in prepared with what you want to say and what core skills you want to portray and abilities, then you'll feel better about the conversation after, and they will too, because you will have answered their questions.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great advice. And what about questions that candidates should ask job interviewers?
I always ask a question. Always ask a question. There's always something you want to know. You can, if you've done some prep beforehand, you can do something like set up a Google News alert. And then if you've gotten anything recently through that, you can ask about that. Basically, anything that helps you as the job seeker candidate evaluate the company and the role, because it is a two-way decision. They aren't interrogating you, like I just said, but you have to find out that they are the right spot for you too. So ask about what you're most excited about. What about the role is really like, yes, I will do this role. Ask them who you will be working with. What other roles will be on your top engagement priorities once you start? What will take up most of your time? And what are the extras that you can take on once you're more comfortable in the role? Things like what kind of training is provided, what's the onboarding process like even. So one of my favorite questions to end with is, do you have any concerns as to why I might not be the right fit for this role? I love that because it allows you to address it right there. If they say, I'm a little worried you're not assertive enough, then you can be like, well, here's 5 examples when I was really assertive. Like, you can really nip that in the bud and um, keep it going. Don't disqualify yourself without an explanation.
Yeah, that's really interesting. It
Mm.
seems like kind of a scary question to ask, but maybe,
Yeah,
yeah, it seems like a good one.
maybe don't use the intonation that I did. That was a little bit scary. But if you make it more conversational, like, do you have any more concerns or something like that? Is there any reason why I wouldn't fit? You can make it
Yeah.
more engaging and respectful, I guess.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And you mentioned as well earlier in the podcast following up after a job interview. What would you recommend expressing to job interviewers, and how important do you think it is to follow up?
It's really important. Not many candidates do take the time to send a quick something afterwards. Um, and it can make all the difference in whether they call you back again. Um, a thank you note of some sort is always recommended. Um, Express some gratitude for their time. They took time out of their busy schedules to talk with you specifically, so that's pretty great and should be acknowledged. As well as your excitement about the role, about the company, and as much as possible, tie it back to something personal about your conversation. That can be really tricky because when you're in the interview, your mind is just going, and then you might forget everything you said the second you walk out. But if there's any little personal tidbit that you got from the conversation, even in um, the small talk that happened at any point, bring that up, and then that will help them remember exactly who you were too.
Yeah, that's great advice as well. And lastly, what is your advice for staying motivated, maintaining a positive mindset during a prolonged job search?
Take breaks is a really good one. It sounds maybe counterproductive, but that's a big way to avoid getting into a dark spiral and losing motivation. Is to give yourself breaks from the work of a job search. Um, Try to adopt a "it's not me, it's you" mindset, because then you're in control of what's going forward. Each rejection can be a good lesson, a good practice, maybe a blessing in disguise. It's depending on the situation. You never really know what you might have avoided by not going into a position. Um, Also, where possible, you can consider upskilling is a really good way to spend some time and um, improve your resume essentially so that you're more attractive to other positions that are similar. There's lots of free courses you can add, and you can definitely add free courses to your resume. It doesn't have to be paid post-secondary education. um, and always, that networking can come in really handy. Just go to events, talk to everybody you see. Not that you have to say, hi, I'm Gabrielle, I'm job searching, but like even at your daughter's birthday party, you might run into another parent who happens to have an opening at whatever company or know somebody who knows somebody. So just trying to maintain the friendly, happy self that you know you can be when everything is perfect, then that'll get you through it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'd like to move on now to our practices and habits section. But firstly, thank you for sharing all of that. That has all been amazing advice. And I'm learning a lot for myself as well. It's really fantastic to sort of see it from the employer's side as well, since you yourself were, in the past going through these resumes and seeing what works and what doesn't. It's really interesting.
I like
So,
it.
yeah, it's really cool. So, what habit would you recommend practicing when searching for a job?
Networking.
Yep.
Yep. I think that's a really big one. Just build as many connections as you can, um, with the mind frame that not just that you want to get something out of them, but that you can give too. So it's a two-way relationship. And also not just on LinkedIn. Just connecting with somebody on LinkedIn is not always going to cut it. So doing things like joining industry associations, going to trade shows, career fairs, volunteering, even at like any organization doesn't have to be related to your work, but anything like that is a really, really good habit to get into, is just being social, which is hard
Yeah.
for some people, myself included, I know.
Yeah, well, I was going to ask you, networking is great advice, but a lot of people might struggle with that. What do you find some of the common challenges?
There's a lot of pressure around the word networking. Um, it's something I'm honestly still trying to get over. Like, business networking feels like you have to be in a suit and jacket and all stuffy and professional. And um, if you can just try to be authentic, I think is one of the biggest things. You'll attract the right people who get you and will connect with you. Um, and the big challenge, I think, is also making time to do it. Like, sure, you know that there's a networking event, but do you like, how do you prioritize it? You have to actually make it happen. Like, it takes a lot of hard work to make yourself do things that you're a little uncomfortable with. Um, but just think of it as saying yes. Just say yes, see what happens. Worst case, you never go to that organization's networking event again. Like,
Yeah.
it's it, make it lower stakes in your mind so it doesn't sound quite so big and scary.
Yeah, that's great. And being authentic as well is great advice. You don't sort of have to put on a front. You don't want to sort of be lying to people, do you? Being authentic sort of makes you feel more comfortable within yourself, in my experience. So I think that's really key.
Exactly.
Well, I'd like to move on now to our open mic segment. This is really your chance to talk about anything you're passionate about. It doesn't even have to be related to the topic. So the floor is yours.
Um, so the first thing that came to mind was my choir. I have a choir concert coming up this weekend.
Amazing.
Um, I've been singing in choirs a very long time, and my mom has run her own music business out of our house when I was growing up. And um, choir is actually a great networking opportunity. Just putting that in there. Um, and anything when you're where you're seeing the same people over and over and over can be so beneficial to building relationships. That's partly why, as adults, we rarely make friends outside of work, is because those are the people we always see. Um,
Yeah.
yeah. And so, sorry for choir. I've been rehearsing since January, and now is the concert, and it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm really excited.
That's wonderful. Yeah, I'm a musician myself and a dancer, so I know
Mm.
what it's like to be in
Ooh,
rehearsals constantly, and it gets very exciting. I hope it goes well for you. That's really cool.
thank you. Thank
And
you.
great to hear about your mum as well.
Thank you.
Your mum running her business. That's really cool. So
Yeah.
I do want
Entrepreneurship
to
runs in the family.
Yes, of course. I do want to conclude our episode now, but thank you so much for coming to talk on the show today. I've certainly learned a lot from you. And if our listeners want to find out more about you and your work, where should they go?
Mhm. Um, everywhere online. Everything I do is virtual, so I can essentially work with people all over the world. I do have a website, www.gogetterresumes.com. I'm on LinkedIn with a company page, as well as Gabrielle Suttis Resume Writer is my handle on LinkedIn. I have a Facebook page, an Instagram page, and I think that's it right now. There's a lot of things to keep track of.
Yeah, there is, isn't there? Thank you. I will make sure to link all of those in the show notes so our listeners can easily find you. Thank you again for coming on the show. As I was saying, I've learned a lot and I really hope our audience has too. So to our audience, thank you so much for tuning in and we'll catch you in the next episode.
You have been listening to Work in Progress, the Personal Productivity Science Insights podcast produced by the Life Management Science Labs. Listen to episodes from LMSL's 10 Life Management Perspectives on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or other podcasting apps on your smartphone. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider rating our show, sharing it, and subscribing to our channel, as it helps other people find it and us grow to bring you more quality resources. More of our work can be found on our website pp.lmsl.net, where you can join our movement. I'm Joanna. Thanks for tuning in.